Well, hello. This is a Reading Rage movie analysis for A24's Lamb. I am not live, but I am still alive. It's alive. Sorry, it's taken me a while to come back with this movie analysis, but I took a little bit of time, and by a little bit of time I meant a lot of time. I took several months to really digest the film, and I came back to it several times to take notes and more notes, and so this is kind of my spark notes on my movie analysis. I hope you like it. Before we go into the table of contents and just kind of breeze into the rest of it, I wanted you to please keep in mind that today we're going to discuss Lamb, but think about, the history behind Iceland, okay? And so we're going to go into that in just a second, but you are going to see that this is very similar to kind of some of the other movies I've analyzed. I could think of Longlegs, for instance, and I'll tell you why. Because I feel like this movie, Lamb, represents another mother who has this juxtaposition of antagonist and protagonist. She serves as both the protector and the antagonist at the same time. So I feel like we're keeping the same vein, right? And okay, now but first, a bit of history. So I went to BBC because I wanted to kind of look more into Iceland's history to understand a little bit more of the metaphors, the innuendos, some of the things that maybe since I'm not from the Nordic country, that I don't understand. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. So BBC, according to them, says, I won't go into all the dates, but they've had some struggles. They've struggled in their economy for many a decade. And they actually had to get bailed out by the International Monetary Fund when their banks went under. And they also have to pay all that money back until, and I think they're going to be paying back until 2046, they said. Long time. And their appeal to even become a member of the EU was stricken by their own government, by Iceland's own government, which caused protests or like at least some outcry from their citizens in the late 2000s. So I guess that's just tidbit, right, of information on their history. And their history has shown reoccurring issues with sovereignty, right? And so keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind as well, they have their history of Lutheran. They have a Lutheran history as far as religion and faith. So I feel that there are allusions to this political climate throughout the movie. So keep that in mind. So I did make a table of contents just to let you know that there's only a few slides. There's about 8 more total. And we're going to talk about first we're going to go into mountains behind the movie. That's the director, the writer, which I feel is really interesting, and their main actors. Next, allusions and metaphors. So kind of some of the things that we're seeing, symbolism and imagery that we're seeing behind there. And then we continue with that, but specify a little bit more about the Gothic elements in the next slide. And then we go into disability theory and representation, which I really love as a part of this film. In my master's, took several courses that had to do with like disability theory. And as you know, disability theory covers, not just physical, mental, behavioral, but also things like, and I know I've talked about it in other movie analyses that I've done, if you don't know, it could be political. It could be any sort of minority you can think of, whether you're a woman in a patriarchal society, whether you're part of the minority of the political system you're in, and just different things like that, right? So it covers different minorities and how they are disabled in their society, right? And kind of outcast or shunned. So, or have less rights even. Then we go on to more symbolism with animals and, of course, the humors. So weather and then we go into our, is it savior? Is it antagonist? Is it just an all-around trickster? We go into Peter's character, who gets thrown into the middle of things, and we see what he does, right? And then we go into more character comparison in foils and foals, right? And so we do a little play off of the beasts of burden there. And then finally, we just talk about colors, because you know me. I got to talk about colors. I got to talk about the color palettes. I got to talk about all of that. So here we go. So the next slide is going to be mountains behind the movie. And I already told you it's going to be about the director, writers, main actors, and some of the marketing and things, miscellaneous things, right? But first, a note from our unofficial sponsor, Liquid Death. So I actually have Mango Chainsaw here, and I decided not to record my face because I don't know if that's better or worse for viewers, for the audience like you. But thank you for joining, and I just wanted to say, murder your thirst, Liquid Death. Mango Chainsaw, I'm going to drink it for the first time. I've been waiting just for this moment. It's a nice golden color. And I'll tell you that I chose this exact film. I've actually been waiting for a long time till I did this Reading Rage movie analyses because of the golden color and because it plays on the colors in this film. And it's hashtag death to plastic. That's right. It's in that beautiful aluminum tall boy can that we all love, this sparkling water. It says, this ruthless tall boy, a flavor, sparkling water, has a twisted plan to use natural agave and exploding bubbles to murder your thirst and recycle your soul. So thank you to our unofficial sponsor, Liquid Death, death to plastic. Hits the spot every time. Could bring a girl back to life. Or resurrect her back to life. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. We'll get into that in a second. So, mountains behind the movie. So our director is Valdimar Jóhannsson. Hopefully I said that correctly. Writers are Sjón and Valdimar. So they co-wrote this. And I'll get into a little bit more about that. So we have our amazing director who you may have seen his other movies. He worked on projects like Rogue One, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, Game of Thrones, ooh, yes, and Prometheus, which also explains how he met Noomi. I'm assuming he's won many awards, and he even was in part of a PhD program, right? And he's gotten awards from Cannes and the Nordic Council Film Prize. So we're super proud of Valdimar. And then his co-writer is Sjón, but his full name is Sigurjón Sigurdsson. And I wanted to throw this little tidbit in. Yes, those are sugar cubes on the corner of that film on the slide, and I'll tell you why. He's an Icelandic poet, novelist, lyricist, and screenwriter. He's even collaborated with the Sugar Cubes and Björk. And so Björk is, I'm thinking part of the Sugar Cubes. I was looking up a little bit, and he plays Johnny Triumph is his stage nom de plume. And some of his works have even been translated into 30 languages. And we all love Björk, right? I remember you. And so I just didn't want to forget her and his collaboration, because I thought that was a neat a fun fact that I could throw out to you guys. So speaking of the actors that they've worked with, we'll all recognize Noomi Rapace, I hope, and she plays María, the main character. And then, and I first came across Noomi. I've actually been following her career for a long time now. I was graced by a friend who showed me all 3 of the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movies. So she comes out in the original movies, the Scandinavian ones. And I never saw the British remakes because if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? If it's not Baroque, don't fix it. So she did amazing. It's a brutal film series if you've never seen it. She does incredibly well. And I feel like that is another film series that if you're into disability theory and representation, please give that a chance. Give it a try. If you don't know about it, now you know. And then I don't know if you remember when Robert Downey Jr. played Sherlock Holmes. Well, she was one of the main female characters in that film. And then, of course, she's in Prometheus, which most of us will have seen, right? And that's where she, I'm assuming, worked with Valdimar. And then I watched this with my mama, The Drop, with everyone's favorite, Daddy, Tom Hardy. So she was with him. And then, of course, we see our other 2 main characters. Hilmir Guðnason is Ingvar, and then Björn Haraldsson is Petur. The studio is our beloved A24 for all of our beloved final girls. And this theater/streaming platform, don't judge me, okay? It was Amazon Prime, which, given the political climate, I'm a bit ashamed to say. However, I did quite enjoy that due to the movie trivia that you can actually, if you move your mouse towards the top left-hand corner of your screen, it gives you movie trivia throughout the whole entire movie, and it changes every few scenes. And so it does remind me of the atmosphere one gets when we were little and we'd sit in the theater, and right before the previews, there was all that movie trivia that would come up. It just felt like that. It's really, you get more information in each scene. And no, I didn't include those here. So, sorry. The gore level, I'll keep it a secret. I was going to rate it on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, but I thought I'll keep it ambiguous. I'll keep it mysterious, like the movie itself. And so, but not as much as I would have thought, right? But there's a lot of cutaways. There's a lot of suspense. It's really wonderful. Okay. And the marketing, the previews are very good at like suspenseful and keeping things concealed. We didn't really get to see the way Ada looked in those, and it kept you kind of guessing and wondering, but it still made everything look really creepy. You couldn't tell what was going on, who the real antagonist is, who's the murderer. Is there a murderer? I was really loving the previews because it's so enigmatic, right? And then we're going to go on to imagery and symbolism and like the illusions that we see, right? And so it is a dark fairy tale satire, We even hear mentions to fairy tale and folklore, right? And so I did have to look a few things up. When our daddy in the movie, Ingvar, is reading to little Ada, we do see the fairy tale, the person who loved a swan who transformed into a human is what I had to research it, right? So I cut out the middleman for you guys. You don't have to go research it unless you want. It's the story of Dimalim. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, it's written there. You can look it up yourself. And then we also see them only watching TV like a couple of times, right? One is when the game is on, the sports are on, and then another time is when there's like a man talking about a film, right? And the man on TV, when they're watching it, he starts talking about the folklore and the fairy tale that's behind it, right? And we see just a meta scene, right? Like they're talking to the characters, right? But the characters aren't really listening. And I feel like that is also very poignant about the film. They're not taking the cues that are being given to them. And so this movie is about human nature. It's about greed. It's about being grateful for what you have. This movie shows the danger of being too relaxed of parents. It talks about time travel and magical dimensions, which, like I said, is very much talking to them, right? And it's talking about that, I feel, as a metaphor for living in the past, not taking things for granted, right? It's also, lallorona, letting their children run off, people stealing other people's children. You think about that, and I think about Mexican folklore, right? And lallorona. Obviously, these parents, María and Ingvar, could do well with a Mexican grandmother, okay, telling them about the story of lallorona. Like, hey guys, watch your children a little better, and don't be stealing children, because otherwise the cucuy is gonna come get you. And I'll leave it at that, right? If you haven't seen the film, I really did try to keep this as no spoilers as possible. So I'm saying things, but I'm not going to go into too much detail, hopefully. And lastly, we see that there's the way that the meat industry is, and not just in Iceland, but like everywhere around the world, right? And how we treat birthing animals as a carcass to be discarded and used for personal gain, right? And a little bit of history about Iceland is we think of Iceland and the whaling industry, right? And the International Whaling Commission, and how Iceland actually pulled out and then tried to come back. No pun intended about the birthing animals pull out. It's terrible. I'm sorry. And so we see how Iceland wanted to resume whaling after leaving the commission and trying to go back in the 90s and the 2000s. And so that's really interesting, right? And how they said that they would be coming back for scientific, quote, you can't see my air quotes, scientific killings of whales, right? And so just to study them. And we're like, okay, sure, Iceland, whatever you say. But given the fact that they have such tumult in their economy, and how there is so much debt, we see that these citizens are doing their best to stay afloat, pun intended, right? And so I just wanted to give that little tidbit about folklore and kind of symbolism and imagery that we see. And next, we go into a little bit more of the elements that we're seeing, right, and the symbolism and different tropes, right, that we see. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Gothic elements and the house featured in the movie Lamb. So if you see it, you'll notice it seems to get bigger and bigger with each scene. As events unfold, we're given more rooms to view. Like this family has hidden spaces within them that we are discovering with each new scene. And then, of course, the pastoral landscape in the... I see that I copied and pasted my Reading Rage Inc. studios there, and then also my Reading Rage Inc. One is for my YouTube, and one is for my my Instagram. So go check that out if you want to see other things that I'm creating and doing. But most of it's going to be here on YouTube. This is the full version on YouTube, so you're not going to get the behind the scenes, almost like director's commentary that I'm giving you, right? But this is all my own analyses. And so I guess now that we're going into the pastoral landscape, which is another Gothic element that we see in Gothic literature, Gothic films, there is this mystic beauty behind the sweeping green that is shared in wide pan shots, which make one feel a reverence for the Icelandic pastoral countryside, and also small under the weight of such grandeur, yet through the blue skies and solitude, there is like a loneliness that the audience gathers. We quickly see that the two people alone need a village to raise the flock that they've been charged with. I mean, if medical attention is needed or a moida happens, no one will be around to provide any help for miles. We think of Iceland's occupants hardened by years of famine and Denmark rule, yet having to be self-sufficient. This is a similar trope that one finds in Gothic literature and films of castles and landscapes being isolated. So in The Shadow of the Mountain King, I'm sure if you're old enough, you'll remember, the puppets dancing and the bum 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 bum. I don't know if you saw the play when you were little, but I did. And it's in the hall of the Mountain King, right? And so I took a little play off of that. Because we realized that though María and Ingvar are the caretakers of that land, yet like all nature, no one controls the mountain's shadow or the gale approaching. So next we're going to go into disability theory and representation. And the first thing that I like to talk about is depression, grief, and trauma. And this is shown through María and Ingvar's loss, right? So grief and trauma are I feel like a disability that not a lot of people talk about, even when I've read different disability poetry and disability literature. I wrote a paper on the characters that I saw in one of our favorite feminists, right? Jane Austen, and how she has characters that she often incorporates that have depression, right? And so that's when I first started thinking about it a few years ago in grad school, that I feel like depression is something that people that I saw didn't address enough when it came to disability theory. So I do like to incorporate that whenever I do analyses, if I see it there, right? Only if it's there. And a lot of times, it can be. So we see that María and Ingvar's loss, they have grief and trauma from losing their child. And we see how depression can cause people to do things that perhaps they otherwise may not. So hence María's dissension into a wildness, a willing to do anything to keep her family together. And so this depression and trauma is also seen in the blood red. In the first scene, we see María, and the spectrum of blues that we see on Ingvar. His guilt and sorrow are worn on his sleeves. He's also the passive one wearing the cool colors. And when we see them sitting at the table in one of the first scenes, and it's just them in the very beginning of the film talking about time travel and going back in time, and you can sense that there's a loss there. And where he's wearing this plaid colored shirt of cool blues and greens and stuff, Maria's wearing almost like a blue-gray or like a gray shirt, where her character is in the gray. And so I think from the offset we see that, right? She's kind of numb. I feel like even the way she speaks, her listlessness, she's numb still. And then Ada too. We'll talk about her. So I think she represents a powerful heroine for children born with disabilities, whether mental, physical, or behavioral, right? And so she's intelligent. She's beautiful. People love her and feel the desire to protect her once they meet her. So María and Ingvar are strong representations for parents that two things, right? That adopts children from other countries to learn to adapt to other communication styles and other cultural norms, right? And then also parents that choose to adopt special needs children and truly know that their child is worthy of love and care. So I really love that. And then we see, I was watching a part of X-Men the other day, and how Charles Xavier, it's the newest one, right? With what's his name? Papacito, Mr. Tumnus from Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Anyways, and so, he plays Charles Xavier, and he is hitting on this woman at the bar, and he starts hitting on her because she has two different colored eyes, or he uses that, right, as a jumping off point. And he calls it a mutation. And he makes it sound so beautiful that he wins her over by the end of it, right? And just the fact that that's how people adapt, that's how species adapt, that's how cultures adapt, is by little changes, slowly but surely over time. And this might be a contentious point, and please, I'm not trying to insult, but Jesus of Nazareth, as the lore goes, was a child with special gifts, born out of enigma, mystery, who could have been rebuked, but was protected as sacred gift, right? His special powers and differences, they were a blessing instead of a curse, right? And so, we could even see Jesus as, and don't insult, I'm not insulting, as a mutant, right? Or as a child with gifts, with special abilities. That's, he was different than everyone, right? And we're going to go on. And I'm going to talk about kind of some other symbols and imagery that we see. Animals and weather, and the humors, but I'll be brief. So when we talk about, that we look at the opening scene that, as I mentioned, where a storm was raging outside. And it leads us to the first person we see in the movie. The very first person is María. And how this storm is indicative of the storm within her. Maria's wearing red, foreshadowing violence and passion. And obviously we see sanguine, right? So she's still young. She, I feel, is, though sanguine is meant to mean youth, right? I also feel that in this color palette and in this weather, the red shadows violence that's to come, and the passion that's within her to keep her family safe, right? And then the next scene is a clear blue sky over a lush green mountain, and we see our secondary main character, Ingvar, her husband, which shades he's wearing on him are plaid blues and greens, expressing his calm and cool nature, even after losing his daughter, right? And it could show depression. By his side, we see his loyal protector, the family dog. The dog even helps Ada when she's wandering around alone. He goes to protect her. And we see that later in the film, his disappearance... Ow, my cat just bit me. I'm so sorry. We see that his disappearance from the family is foreshadowing that the flock is and has become off-kilter. The cat is watching everything with her own interactions with every character. Very Hitchcock Rear Window. And I almost feel like she kind of represents María in a way. Then next, we see the herd of lambs and how they're foreboding to an adopted mother who feels like a failure from losing her first child and takes her guilt out on them. She is used to being the boss and the matriarch, and her position is threatened when Ada comes along. Thus, they come to María in dreams of dread, but filled with rays of light like otherworldly creatures, when in reality these dreams are manifested due to her guilt from losing Ada. Even when Ada too finds her way outside, her mother, her real mother, is waiting with her, standing guard and protecting her. Maria showing again that she is missing the ability to care for Ada too. Running to Ada too in the fog, a representation that her judgment might be clouded as she redirects her anger that she should feel towards herself for losing her gift child, and she redirects it to Ada's real mother, right? And screams at her. And if you've seen that scene, she screams at her to go away. When in reality, she should be thanking her the whole time for being a protector and the giver of life. So the next scene. Petur, patriarch, returned. So, it's hard to say. I'm going to take a little drinky poo off of my water, my flavored sparkling water. The flavor is mango chainsaw. It's a liquid death. Murder your thirst. Liquid death. So good. So, in Peter's character, there's a lot to unpack there. I'll just be honest. But I'll go through the highlights. So, Peter's character represents, in my opinion, the idea of working or overworking. Not working enough, or working even when you don't want to. The pleasure and work-life balance. The roles of fathers to serve as protectors, or needing a male patriarch that's going to serve as a protector. He's a brother entering the family which was created, already had another patriarch. But he had left, right? And so he goes back to the family farm. Peter serves as many things in this film, honestly. He goes from judge to protector patriarch to brother, to competition, to the bard, to the lore holder, to the violator. So we see that, he even mentions to Ada that he was the one that used to read the fairy tales to his little brother Ingvar when they were young. That he was the one that knew all of the rhymes. And that, unfortunately, his brother didn't know the rhymes. And that could be a key here that Ingvar was missing. And so Ingvar lets Maria make all the decisions and is still living with his guilt, right? And so we see that comparison between their character. One is more passive. Ingvar's lets a lot of stuff go, even after he sees his brother try to, he's a competition basically in the household. And Peter, he decides the fate of Ada too at one point, his adopted niece, to let her live when her parents slept, when she could have died. And I feel like this also alludes to Jesus on the Mount of Olives. If you remember when Jesus asks for the disciples to stay awake and they fall asleep, and he comes back several times and is like, hey, I need you to stay awake. And they don't. And so constantly they're losing Ada, and there are so many chances for them to do more, to try and do more. And unfortunately, they don't know how to caregive for such a special child. And a metaphor for how, I think Petur is a metaphor for how parents and society and just and our communities, we need help to watch over each other and not turn a blind eye. Like Ingvar letting his brother watch his wife bathing, right? And not sleep while innocents are stolen or lost. Right? And so we think of Native people being taken from their homes in different parts of the world and how their homes are destroyed. And we are letting that happen. At least the United States is letting that happen in other parts of the world. And we think of all the different places that are warring. And of course, the top one that a lot of people are talking about is Gaza, right? And then we also look at Petur as this pushy older brother. He's rude, he's disrespectful, he's got this male bravado, but he's like holding this passion inside, right? And he's also has this loss inside of him. Almost like he was lost to Maria and the family home, and then he comes back like the prodigal son. There's like this duplicity here that we see, because duplicity is very common in Gothics. And so we see how Petur has this, he was lost but now found. He comes back, right? This resurrected brother. Ada also is like this Jesus-like reincarnation who was lost in the marsh but resurrected, a daughter returning after being lost. And once Petur is sent away, it's like he's lost again. Maria losing her chance with protecting Ada and having her family back, her community, her herd, so her flock. So one may even think of the father animal spirit who returns to fight for Ada as like an alter ego of Petur. It's his jealousy transformed and embodied. At least that's my theory. I don't, it doesn't, take it or leave it. And so I wanted to go over foils and foals, right? And a foal is like a baby beast of burden. And so we're talking about character comparisons here. And this is the second to last slide. But I thought this was really interesting where we see Maria versus Ada 2's biological mother, right? So Maria goes from this like midwife, birther, and lifesaver, this shepherd and caregiver, to the harbinger and bringer of death, when she's willing to steal Ada 2 away without any thanks, without any gratitude, right, towards her real mother. Psychologically, I understand that she's going through a lot, right? She's still depressed, she's prideful, she's feeling, honestly, I think she's suffering from womb envy. Whereas Ada 2's biological mother has a whole family, her herd, right? Maria is cold with Ingvar before Ada 2 arrives, and she sends Petur away, breaking up the only family he has and she has. So instead of being the shepherd, shepherding them all together, she breaks everybody's family up. And so Ada 2, as I said, is kind of like Jesus Christ. She's given and taken away, like a play on religion and society. And Maria and Petur, when we compare them, the two strongest, prideful characters in this movie, they're both passionate. They're both willing to do anything for their happiness and desires, and there's no telling what either of them would do. So almost like Petur was divinely sent to Maria to help take care of Ada once she refused him, tragedy befalls the family, right? So it's like shortly after Ada arrives, Petur just like mysteriously shows up, right? And after Petur leaves, when Maria denies him, is it his alter ego that comes out in the form of a nature spirit and takes her happiness by force? We see they knew each other and may have dated as children, but he moved away. Petur even tells Ada 2 that he was the older paternal figure to Ingvar, who knew all of the lullabies. He knew all of the rhymes, which can be interpreted as a spiritual connection to folklore, right? Maybe even as like some sort of, what do they call it? Like a druid. And we know that Iceland, they have the Irish and the Scottish Highlanders that immigrated there and were one of the kind of their native population, because it's them and the Nordic people that moved there. And so who knows, right? And then Petur and Ingvar, when we compare them, we see that Petur is this older brother who's used to being the parent to Ingvar. Petur is actually more careful with Ada 2 than both her adopted parents. We see this in the tractor scene when he agrees to have her in the tractor with him while working. And Ingvar lacks experience child rearing, but tries his best. we learn Ingvar is prone to losing his children. And so Ingvar even does this one thing that I think is pretty poignant. He purposely breaks part of the tractor, and that's like he literally and metaphorically breaks the machine. And that could be a metaphor for frivolities, for carnal passion over protection. I mean, he's a husband first instead of a father first, right? And so we compare this to Joseph in the Bible, Jesus's father, potentially, and his willingness to adopt Jesus as his own son. But at the crucifixion in the Bible, I mean, we don't really hear that much about Joseph, right? We mostly hear about the mother Mary. And how that's a pun on Maria, right? The mother's name. And so that's we kind of see that there's less of Joseph in the Bible than we hear about his mother Mary. And even how we see a halo around Adatu's head with her flower crown, and all the yellow that's emanating from her, and the yellow sweater and her little flower crown. So I think that's really poignant when we compare the characters together. Let me say poignant one more time. Just kidding. So the last slide, of course, I couldn't do this without talking about the colors. And I know I have kind of already, but I wanted to tell you that again. That, we see the blues, the greens, the glowing ominous halo yellows, the pastel yellows, the deep reds, and, of course, black. So when Ada is taken to be killed by Petur, she's wearing black. And he's wearing black. When Ingvar is attacked, she's wearing blue. This idea of depression again, right? When we first see Petur, though, going back to black, he's wearing a black leather jacket. And what's leather? Animal skin, right? And then, of course, when we see Ada and she's in the field with her mother, she's surrounded by these yellow flowers, and we see her wearing a yellow sweater. But where else do we see the yellow? Do you remember? When Maria dreams of the lambs haunting her dreams, right? And so where one is this like ominous glowing yellow, Ada's like in this like baby yellow, like a baby pastel yellow. And so this kind of means that she's still connected to her herd. She's still connected to her mother, her biological mother. And then when Ada too is first introduced to Petur, he's wearing black. And the married couple's wearing almost the same kind of shirt. If you see Maria and Ingvar, they're wearing this plaid shirt with like cool blues. Does this represent that the married couple finally is of the same mind in adopting Ada too? And that there is a kind of calmness in the household, that they are finally on the same ground again. Then later, when Petur takes Ada out to kill her, they're both wearing black. Overall, do you think, are they the bringers of death to the family, Petur and Ada? Stuff to think about, right? And of course, my theory about his jealousy personified through a druid spirit, an animal spirit. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it gave you some food for thought if you saw the movie. It did come out several years ago, but I recently watched it. It had been on my to-watch list and for a long time now. I just didn't have the means to watch it, honestly. And finally, I got around to it, and I was watching it with a friend, and he was good enough to let me take notes. and I'm so grateful for that. And we were able to stream it, and I was able to see that trivia through, and it talks about the actors and the directors and just different things. So I highly recommend watching this film. And thanks so much for staying on it. And again, I want to thank our unofficial sponsor, who may one day become an official sponsor, Liquid Death. Murder your thirst. All right, guys. Don't take your babies for granted. Don't let them wander off by themselves. Because otherwise the kukui animal spirit druid jealousy personified will come and get ya. Okay? Take your family, tell them you love them. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. All right? I love y'all as best as I can, as your neighbor, right? Love your neighbors as yourself, but better, right? Love them as they would want to be loved. Culturally, respect their culture, respect their boundaries, and take care, y'all. Till next time. This is a Reading Rage movie analysis of A24's Lamb. And it's not alive, but I'm alive. I'm alive! It's alive! It's alive! Thanks.